Hey guys, welcome to Layman's Terms Podcast, a place where we talk about really big topics using the smallest words possible. I'm Danny the bartender.
And I'm Tommy the trash man.
And together we're just two guys trying to explain the ever-changing world around us the only way that we know how. And there's a lot going on. So today we're going to touch on a few topics, but we're going to start off with sports, something I know nothing about, but Tommy is going to indulge me. Apparently there's some juice in the Barstool Sports. And is it Barstool Sports? I thought it was a beef between him and Barstool.
Well, yeah. So Michael Rapaport, who is an actor, I guess, I don't know if he'd be a comedian. I don't really know.
Well, I don't think he's that funny lately.
I don't think he's that funny either. I saw him, I'm like, dude, he's got 2.2 million people. I mean, dude, the claim to his fame, I mean, the pinnacle of his career, in my personal opinion, was when he played Remy, the white supremacist, the skinhead guy in the movie Higher Learning, which we talked about before on the podcast. It's a fantastic movie. I strongly suggest people watch it. It came out in like the 90s, and it still has like cultural relevance to, kind of what's going on today. Between that and maybe True Romance, he was in True Romance, and that movie was just one of the greatest movies of all time. So he was he had a small bit role, but everything about that movie was fantastic. So again, he's not really somebody I like. I feel like he's just a loudmouth that just like clout chases, and like he's just all over the place. Like he gets on, he's like, fucking Trump, you fucking pussy, you this and that, come to New York, you big fucking pussy, I'll take you around the shed and blah, blah, blah. Like, shut up, Michael Rapaport. You ain't doing shit. Everybody knows you ain't doing shit. Now, he's had some issues. So apparently he had some issues with Barstool Sports. Apparently he must have signed on to do a podcast with them a while back. And eventually it was terminated. I don't really know all the details about it. Like, I guess there was some issues with Portnoy, whatever the case may be. But he tried to sue Dave Portnoy because I guess they terminated his contract early, whatever the case may be. And then he was saying defamation of character because Barstool released a T-shirt with his face on it and a clown, like dressed as a clown, and with a herpy on his lip. Because I don't know if anybody saw the pictures, but there are pictures. If you Google Michael Rapaport, he had a gigantic like herpy. Like it wasn't even on his lip. Like it was like on his chin.
Yeah.
And like I was like, what the fuck? I didn't even know herpes. Like I know herpes would be on your lip, but dude, it was like it looked like the fucking Swamp Thing. Like I was like, what the fuck is growing on your face, bro? So Barstool, they just put out a clip of the interview, during Michael Rapaport's lawyer was interviewing Portnoy, and they had it on film because they were trying to say that Portnoy made this T-shirt up and had it on the back burner to use against Michael Rapaport. Now in the tape, he said, he's like, he was like, Michael Rapaport called me gay. He was like saying he was going to beat my ass, all this stuff, whatever. He I guess he must have put pictures out that he was fucking Dave Portnoy from the back. And Portnoy was like, look, actually, he goes, I texted the wrong Michael Rapaport or whatever. He goes, and I fired the wrong Michael Rapaport. Then I corrected myself and fired him. And I knew that he was going to be the loudmouth that he is. So once that happened, I was like, and then I'm ready, and put out a shirt. So they were trying to say that he was doing it, but whatever, in the recordings, it kind of proved that he didn't, and he won. And then on top of that, which I don't know, this is another thing that I don't really know enough about, but I just caught wind of it. And I'm like, dude, I feel like I'm kind of cloud chasing now because I'm calling out fucking Michael Rapaport. Like but apparently he had an issue with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's a basketball player in the NBA, Brooklyn Nets. And I don't really know all the backstory. It's not really important. but they had a little Twitter beef or whatever. Kevin Durant went on to call him a pussy, and he was saying all this shit, and he was like, "You wouldn't say that to my face. Meet me here." Blah 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 blah. Now, some people might say that Kevin Durant isn't a good guy. I don't know. I don't know enough about him. Whatever. But it was all in his DMs. He wasn't putting this really out there. You know what I'm saying? Well, Michael Rapaport goes and like publishes it and like posts it publicly. And I'm like, that's a bitch move.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're such a badass, what are you doing posting DMs of a basketball player? Like, you're clout chasing, bro. All you're doing is trying to attract attention to yourself right now. And I was like, it's such a bitch move. Like, I was like, you're making yourself look like a fool. You just took 2 major L's in the past week.
What I see with Michael Rapaport is, like you said, what his number one role is Remy, right? Which is, am I saying that right, Remy?
Remy, yeah.
So Remy was a dude who turned into a white supremacist, right? So I feel that Michael Rapaport, his film persona or his like celebrity persona, is the epitome of what we talk about constantly. The guy who screams the loudest. It's like he has been trying to make up for that role. I mean, think about it. Like, that was his big role. And ever since then, he's like a hip hop guru, a fucking basketball lover, he's constantly talking shit on Trump and white supremacists and whatever. And, I mean, nobody, I mean, if he wants to talk, I'm just saying what he basically is, what I see from him is he did some funny thing where he would rip everybody that he beat in like fantasy football. You ever see that shit?
No.
So like during like weekly matches, he might be like in a fantasy league with like a couple other celebrities,
Yeah.
And like I saw a couple of his Twitter things where he's like, "I'm fucking you in the ass," and I'm like, "What is he talking about?" And it was all fantasy football. But like then I started seeing what he would say about Trump and all this other stuff, and I'm like, this guy's he's clearly, if you ask me, I mean, he's clearly, like you said, clout chasing. Every time he tweets something, it's like, how can I ruffle feathers, but at the same time, look like I don't know what he's doing with Kevin Durant, but everything I've seen is like he's also tries to make himself out to be like he's fucking down. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, the funny thing, even Durant said, he's like, now that Trump never paid attention to your sorry ass, and now you're just looking for somebody else, to go after. You know what I mean?
But what did he do with LeBron?
Well, no. So he didn't do anything with LeBron. But recently, there's been, because as the world turns left, we continually, the oppression Olympics is constantly, an ever-changing game, and the rules are always changing, and the ideas are always clashing. So there's been a few stories recently when it comes to women's sports and men's sports. There's been a meme that's been going around. A WNBA player, Sue Bird, which I didn't know who she was, but she's been in the WNBA for 17 seasons. She's got 4 WNBA championships. In 2020, her salary was $215,000. Bonus for winning 2020 finals was $11,356. So the meme and the thing that's going around is her comparison to LeBron James, because LeBron James he's been in the NBA for 17 seasons. He has 4 championships. His 2020 salary was $37.4 million, and his bonus for winning 2020 finals was $370,000. So you got a bunch of women out there like, here we go, look at this. And I it's almost like I don't even know what to say about this, because I don't know how you can even make the comparison. The general earnings last year, I think I saw something, was about $60 million for the WNBA. The NBA was 6.4 billion, I think, something like that. So obviously there's going to be differences in salary. I mean, it's clear as day. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's women. It's just the fact that it's money.
Yeah.
That you're not generating a product. It's like what we said, like, should we get paid the same as Joe Rogan? Like, no, we both do the same thing. Now, obviously, you know, they're trying to compare the fact that they both won championships, all that. We're not on that level, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is it his salary? Is it just his salary? Because this is another fucking thing. People like to play with numbers. Did they say like this is what he made this year, or did they say this is his NBA salary?
It just says the salary. That's on the meme. So like I didn't really break down all the details.
This to me, here goes something too that I think is very interesting when it comes to things like this. I don't know if you've heard me say it before, but one of the things I get mad about when I see these people talking about equity and fucking, you know, all these white people screaming about racism and shit. And I think in my head, like, if you just don't be racist in your life, or if you like, in other words, I don't know, as dumb as that sounds, it's an easy thing for you to fix then, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like it's an easy thing. So what I'm thinking about when I think about like this woman stuff is like, it's women, like there's enough women in the world to watch the WNBA and change that what you just said, but they don't want to, you know what I mean?
Right.
But then they want to scream about this, like, yeah, see how messed up this is. And these are these things where, you know, I wish to God that there was a woman that was making nobody, first off, nobody's making money like LeBron James. Well, there probably is a few, but I would say he's one of like 6 dudes that are making in that echelon of money that play basketball. So, you know, a lot of his money comes from sponsorships and jersey sales. So what are you supposed to do? Like, does he have to give like, it doesn't make any sense. It's the world of celebrity, you know? It's you could be the funniest comedian in the world, but if people don't buy your DVD or whatever it is nowadays, you're not going to make that much money. That's just simple as that. You know, nobody owes you. Like the most famous comedian of a certain race or a certain gender doesn't owe someone else money because, you know, that it's not a good way to show the comparison, but yet they still do it. I don't understand it.
It's the same. It's like the same logic of like Walmart should pay their employees, you know, 16 whatever dollars an hour. They can afford to pay their employees more, absolutely. But the government wants to come in and say everybody has to do it. Well, sure, Walmart can afford to do it, but your local corner store can't afford to pay their employees $16 an hour.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Like they're not generating the same income. It's just.
And when I said the thing about like this is the game they play with salaries and stuff, you know, I've never looked into it, but you know how Bernie Sanders will always say that thing like the he doesn't say upper management. He says like the CEO pay or something has gone up this much or whatever. Right. Dude, there's one CEO. Like if you go to school to go for business, and you know, like I doubt even one person out of your class will be a CEO of anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if you become the CEO, so when he's probably doing them numbers, he's looking at like the CEO of Walmart, the CEO of fucking, like just the fact that there's a CEO of Amazon will just destroy the comparable numbers altogether, you know? And then these guys get paid because they're like owners. So they get paid in stocks. And it's so if they become the CEO of a company and they manage it, they get stock pay. And if they make that $30 stock become a $60 stock, and then they get to cash in on that, and that's considered pay. I mean, that's not really the same thing as pay. But I just love how they like to use these numbers and make you think, oh, and I actually think that, yes, there's a major fucking overpayment between like people that are high up in, say, Amazon or whatever. But even then, there's just a collection of guys. It's not like fucking, it's not like there's 100,000 people on the bottom and 100,000 people on the top, and the 100,000 on the top wages go up, you know, exponentially differently than everybody else's. Well, does that make sense?
Yeah, and here's the thing. So I just out of curiosity, I looked up the CEO of Disney. He made 21 million in fiscal year 2020, and the year before he made 47 million. Now, I'm not for the government. We talked about this. I don't think it's the government's position to come in and say this is how much you should pay your employees. I am not for that at all. Now, in a case like that, this may sound ignorant. I don't know, because I'm not a CEO. I have no idea what it takes to be a CEO and run Disney, things like that. But could I see maybe the owner of Disney, the Walt Disney, who hires, the board of trustee, whatever, if they reimagine their pay scales on their own and say, well, listen, we're going to pay our CEO 10 million a year, and the rest of that money we're going to reinvest into our employees. I think that is a more fair way to go about it than the government coming in making and federally making it, a law how much you should pay them.
Oh, 100%. But even with what you're saying, you got to think of a company like Disney doesn't have owners anymore. So this is where I started thinking about this the other day. The CEO of Disney is basically like the owner of Disney is now all these people that just have inherited shares, and they're just major shareholders, or they buy. Sometimes somebody will come in and buy a majority stake or something to get some weigh in. But so you got to think, like, most times the CEO technically is not really a boss. Like, in other words, you instantly become like the owner of Disney. And then what they'll say, see how he made 41 million one year and 21 million the next.
Right.
That's because, see, I used to trade Disney. So Disney was like $30 a share when Bob Iger came on. So Bob Iger took Disney up to like $150 a share. And Bob Iger was ready to retire when it was like, he was trying to take it to like 180 or 200 and drop Disney Plus. But then the market it fell back. And when Bob Iger retired, Disney was like $80 or $90. So I guess what I'm saying is Bob Iger is taking it's not like they just flat out pay him. They do, I'm sure. But a lot of that calculated, like when they said he made 41 million, he could have made 10 million. It was you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of that.
So there's incentives.
And he takes it there, you know?
And that's the thing. So like, it's one thing if your salary is 41 million or 21 million or even 20 million, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to do incentive based on top of that contract, then that's one thing. Like, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But, so apparently his net worth is $690 million. So again, it's one of those things where like, I don't know. I don't really know the ins and outs of business to really fully understand that. I just know that I feel like companies like Amazon, Walmart, major corporations like that, they have the means to do it. I think it's up to them. If people want to, organize and kind of do whatever they got to do to kind of get raises, you know what I'm saying? I think it's more, I just think it's more fair for the company itself to determine wages.
100, yeah.
As opposed to the government, because again, there's companies like Amazon and all that can afford it. And when the government just comes in and makes that a sweeping across the board for everybody, then that just hurts small businesses.
Going with that too, I think like what's a shame is that they don't like see. I think that if I imagine if I owned a company, right, that if I actually had people in my company that really showed me value, you know what I mean? I think I would take care of them beyond what, like if I was making that kind of crazy money, I would take care of them beyond what their wage would be worth somewhere else or something.
Right.
However, it's like one of them things where you can't force anybody to do anything. And then when they get involved and they force you to do something across the board, Well, now, like, it's funny that nobody can find some way to kind of like, like keep it where you're safe, because nobody wants to be stuck paying a worthless piece of shit $18 an hour. But
Right.
at the same time, like, it's nobody should be working at the same job for 10 years and only making $18 an hour, and you're making billions.
Yeah, and a lot of times people like to compare, Switzerland and how their economy runs and how they I guess make a better living wage, but they also don't have a minimum wage. Basically, all of their workers are unionized, and they, negotiate with the companies, and they determine who gets what. Again, so that in some ways I do think that's better, but I also, it's tough. Unions, look, just like everything else, there's pros and cons in unions. Um, so yeah, and Megan, I don't even know how to pronounce her last name. Rapinoe or whatever. I don't fucking know. Women's soccer player.
Oh, yeah.
She's got the pink hair, and she's always outspoken and saying all her shit. And of course, she comes out and saying women, she's underpaid as a women's soccer player. Now, I don't know the numbers compared to women's soccer league and men's soccer league, because I'm pretty sure that men's soccer league, they make more because it's more popular, just like all sports are. But even in America, I mean, the men's soccer league, I can't imagine they're not generating anything like the NBA or NFL or MLB.
Well, that's a perfect example, actually, because our men's professional soccer players are basically paid like WNBA players. They
Yeah,
can't demand to be paid like Ronaldo and shit like that from
right,
they like, I mean, that would be insane. And
right.
do you remember when David Beckham came over here and they paid him like $40 million a year and he played like 1 year?
Yeah. But see, that was just they were trying their hardest to bring it over here. He's obviously a huge superstar, so they wanted to bring him over here, and hopefully that would, like,
Well, yeah, they were just
generate a lot of buzz.
they wanted the buzz. And the other thing to show you an example of that is, I could be wrong, but I don't remember anything but excitement from the men. Like, there were men on his team making like $30,000 a year.
I'm sure there was definitely some men that were probably excited that they
Well,
were
no. But
Beckham.
dude, by the way, did you see it was pretty neat. Did you see the Tom Brady, David Beckham, little beach football? Oh, it was on Barstool.
No, I didn't see it.
It was Tom Brady on the beach playing football with some dude who's like a restaurateur who's kind of like a famous on Instagram. I think his name's like Dave Gregan or something like that.
No.
And David Beckham kept picking the dude off. Like, they tried like 4 times and David Beckham picked it off.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, no, but like basically it was like the men who, like, they saw that as like an opportunity for their league to get better. But I mean, there's never been an American soccer player paid anything near what that dude was paid.
No, it's not even close to international soccer. I mean,
and some of those sports, I do feel bad. Like, especially, there's a lot of like Olympic sports too, where, like, all right, if you're on the dream team, then and you're playing basketball or whatever, I mean, you're everybody loves you. You're like even in the Olympics, it's like then you got some guy who's like an Olympic curler, which takes as much training, like in its own way. Like, you have to still be the best curler,
yeah.
And them dudes are like training, 18 hours a day and working at fucking Burger King. So, I mean, you're the sport you choose and what the draw is, and that's it. I mean, there's really, I mean, first off, let me be really honest with you. Like, whatever that girl's getting paid for playing soccer, fuck, I'll take it for whatever I'm doing. Like
Exactly. Like, she's making more than the average person working the average job. So it's like, it's just this insane cycle that's going on in the world. that, you know, like, again, it's like these liberal ideas that, like, look, I'm a woman, I should be paid as much as a man, without any context. You know, this happens to Black people. It's kind of like what we're seeing recently with the Asian hate crimes that have been kind of like on the rise. So obviously that's been in the news. That was kind of like, you know, now it's like stop Asian hate. Uh, so again, of course, it's a good thing, but then everybody is like, well, it's white supremacy. Well, not exactly. Not exactly. If we look at the numbers, which again, I'm not really sure why nobody wants to look at any of these things. They just want to like sprinkle some magic fairy dust over everything and just think that with nice words and safe spaces, they'll just make these things go away. And it's just not happening. So
well, here's
the numbers show that Asians are attacked at a higher rate by African Americans. It's not by much. It might be like 27%, and then like whites on Asians like 24%. Strangely, hate crimes on Black people from white is only like 10%, which is like I'm like it's wild.
Well, that's because. Well, wait. This is what makes me laugh now too. What the fuck is a hate crime? And I would love to know the statistics within the statistics of the hate crime, because first off, when you said it's wild that only 10% of crimes on whites from Blacks are hate crimes. Well,
no, the opposite. There was only 10% of white people commit crimes, hate crimes
on Black.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that is surprising.
Yeah, but in the context of that, most crimes, violent crimes in general, does happen within communities. You know, like obviously white on white crime is higher than black on white. Black on black is higher than black on white. You know what I'm saying? So usually the majority of the crime that takes place is within the community like that you're living in. That makes sense.
What's the statistic of black hate crimes on whites? It's got to be like zero, because they don't count them as anything as that.
I don't know how they count that, because apparently it never happens.
That's what I'm saying. That's kind of what I thought you were saying. That's why I was confused, but the other way around, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I do have it somewhere on my phone. You know, it's again, the narratives are just absolutely crazy. So I don't remember where this guy shot up the massage parlors. Do you remember
Atlanta?
Was it Atlanta? Okay, so apparently, you know, I'm sure everybody knows the story. The guy went on a little rampage, and you know, he shot 8 people. Was it six
Asians, two
and,
whiteys,
and 2 white folk. You know, and apparently, with all the information that they have, there were roommates that were saying he had, like, you know, some sexual issues that, you know, kind of revolved around his religious beliefs. The massage parlors that I guess he found the addresses to, he was on like some kind of like, you know, when you get those little newspapers in the mail, or on the subway, on like the back page, it shows you like
circled with a big marker.
Yeah, it shows you, you know, where to get your escorts at and all that stuff. So apparently he was on a website. That's where he found these massage parlors. And every single thing that kind of pointed to, I mean, he even said, I did this, like I have, you know, some sexual urges, and like I was like mad. He was basically mad that they're available. And they just rushed out and was like, well, it's a hate crime. And it's like, well, I mean, how are we determining that? Because basically all the information contradicts that. But
not only all the information contradicts that, he contradicts that.
Well, yeah.
He contradicts.
So like that. Now we're not even going to take this guy by his word. Now, obviously, people lie. I mean, it's not like I think he's an upstanding citizen. I'm not going to put it past him to lie. He just killed a couple people.
But at the same time, if you're that crazy, I'm going to trust that you're that, like you're gonna fucking, if you went out to make a statement, it's too late to go back on your statement. It's made. So why would you walk it back now? Oh, no. No, I'm not
Uh,
racist. I just hate massage parlors.
yeah. Yeah. And then what was what? Now I'm drawing a blank. There was
Well, then the
the other,
Colorado one,
the Colorado one. And
which was, well, the thing with the Colorado one was that for the first 2 or 3 days, they didn't tell you what the nationality or race of was of the shooter, which I'm realizing now, and I think I texted you this. I'm realizing now what happens is that when they know it's a white guy, that is the mass shooter, they don't need but 3 seconds to start telling you the whole story of racism and everything else. When they don't know who the shooter is yet, or when they do know and they don't know how to spin it, it's like they don't release it right away because they're trying to figure some way to spin it. And maybe I'm fucking crazy, but that's what it seems like to me. And everybody came out and said, this is white supremacist. This is white supremacy. This is a white, here's another white guy and talking about guns. And then it came out that he actually wasn't white, that he was I think he's a Muslim guy.
yeah.
Somebody even called him an Asian guy, but I think that's a far stretch. I think like somehow by his nationality, you can technically call him an Asian of Asian descent, but he's not. I think he's just like a
He,
Muslim guy.
yeah, he was from Syria.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and another thing too, and I'm not trying to get crazy political, but what people say about that is that first off, he was not he was not a Trump supporter. He hated Trump or whatever.
Right. Right.
But I have heard some people say that like the reason why you don't get too many of the details, because some of the details came out and it was like he hated America and the government, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you think about it, Biden just bombed Syria like fucking 3 weeks ago. Not that maybe Trump wouldn't have or didn't, but like in other words, you're going to turn around and say white supremacy immediately, but when a guy from Syria goes and kills 10 white people, you still talk about white supremacy. Meanwhile, there's many other factors in the air that would be easily like more relatable than what they're trying to spin, you know?
Well, I could actually see, in to some extent, the white supremacy spin on that, because if you do go by the argument that the government, that maybe he was motivated by the government dropping bombs on Syria, well, you would say that, the West and white supremacy, the America's white supremacy run, you know what I mean? So you could maybe make that connection, like
Yeah, well, but exactly. But what I mean is, they didn't make it. You're right. I mean, I'm not even arguing what you're saying. What I'm saying is the little piece though of where, yeah, if we had a real press is what I'm saying, and let's just say they didn't know what happened for 2 days and they were just having commentary on it. Like, yes, you could make the statement you're making, but it's just kind of ironic that nobody makes even the statement that correlates Syria. You know what I mean? Like they just like no, they came up with something. He was bullied and
well,
bullied by white people or something.
yeah, and speaking of the media outlet, CNN, when it said developing story, investigation, the shooter was factually Arabic, but
Yeah,
he was morally white.
yeah,
And I was like, what does that mean?
yeah.
Like, my morals don't match up with that guy's. And I'm a white guy and I'm not gonna go shoot some people. So I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Just kind of kick whitey when something else. It's like kind of like when everything goes wrong, it's like, well, that's a white guy. And and that's when you mentioned the statistics, there was also, and this is what I mean by news, media, and it's just so strange on who you turn to and who you watch is how you view the world. So I don't know if you heard about the guy in Pittsburgh that stabbed a boy at McDonald's. Did you hear about that?
Is this the one real recent that he was let out of jail that killed his parents?
I don't know. I don't know any. I don't know. All I know is that a Pittsburgh man, he stabbed a 12-year-old at McDonald's, and he used racial slurs. He called him a white demon and all this stuff. Now, this is the Fox headline. Pittsburgh man accused of stabbing boy 12 at McDonald's, used racial slurs, bit witness. Now the CNN. CNN article: a 12-year-old and his family were waiting in line at McDonald's when a man stabbed the boy. Now, I read the article, not a single mention of race whatsoever. But it's interesting because the guy used racial slurs, so you could absolutely consider that a hate crime, right? I mean, if somebody comes out and says it, I would think that's the definition of a hate crime. Yet CNN didn't say anything about it, not a goddamn thing. And this is what I mean by, what we see and the news that we ingest. It's just crazy how the different spins on everything. And when people are like, "Oh, you're conspiracy theorists saying that the left is controlling the media," blah 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 blah. Look, it's all over the place. I mean, it's right in front of your face. I don't know at this point how you can't see that the left isn't controlling the national narrative. Not to say that we, conservatives don't have Fox or OAN or some voices, but the majority of mainstream media, this is all you see. The narrative is one thing. It's overwhelmingly one way, and usually it's inaccurate. And it's just like, again, it's like just trying to sprinkle some fairy dust over these issues, and the real issues are not being addressed because people are worried about being called a racist, or they're worried about hurting people's feelings. But we're not going to solve anything. We're not going to solve anything by just blaming somebody else for somebody else's actions.
Well, this is the thing that is really scary with the media to me. And going back to what you said, where, how do you not see that that the left is in control of the media? The thing that people don't understand is ABC, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, they are not, that is the illusion of choice. They're all on the same team. Every once in a while, one of them will take the little bit of a stretch that the other one won't. Like one will interview the 16th Cuomo accuser finally. You know what I mean? And but the thing that I think is amazing, what they've created is they create the illusion that they are 4 or 5 truthful, factual media, and anyone against them, which would be Fox, OAN, Newsmax, which, I mean, Newsmax and OAN are like internet things, and Fox is really the only one that they have. Think about the power that they've created, where the other 4 networks that people believe are not necessarily in cohesion, they have you convinced that their competing networks are conspiracy theorist networks. So therefore, all they have to do to discredit anyone is they just refuse to have them on their network. So then that person goes to Fox or OAN. And the minute that they're on Fox or OAN, they're discredited in the eyes of the other people. So think about the power of that. Like, don't let Rudy Giuliani on your network. So he ends up on OAN. Then it's even worse for the guy. You know what I mean? Now he's a fucking crazy lunatic, even more. And your friend will say, "Where'd you hear that, OAN?" And it's like you said, I mean, at this point, I don't know. I mean, like, because I'm not in that world and never really was in politics. I never was that engaged in politics until I started watching them both. And then I might have said this on here before, but the only reason why I started watching Fox was actually because I started noticing that Trump would be speaking and CNN would not be covering it. And I would turn Fox on and he'd still be giving a speech. And then I just started to realize on my own, like, CNN just fucking cutting this dude off and then making up their own story. Meanwhile, if you watch his whole speech, and I did all that with my, I didn't know how the political shit was set up. I actually used to think Fox was crazy, but I started watching them because they would play his whole speeches. And I guess the whole thing is that at this point, I think the problem is that people don't realize that when they're watching The View, that when they're watching Stephen Colbert, that when they're watching SNL, they're still watching an arm of the left-wing media,
Oh, yeah.
And so it's subtly like me and my girlfriend were watching SNL the other night, and SNL like said something and then put up a picture of like 6 Republicans and said, these guys, like, what do you mean? Like these relics of the Jim Crow era or whatever? And she laughed and was like, looked at me like, see what I mean? They're all racist. And I looked at her, I'm like, what do you know about them? Tell me about them 6 people.
Yeah.
And she had nothing to say. And then I realized like, that's what people don't understand, the power of this shit. This what I would call propaganda is you watch SNL, you like SNL, and you think that SNL represents the United States. And it's, if they wouldn't talk about something if it wasn't true.
Right.
And then they tell you these sick, in a nutshell, in a quick joke, these guys are relics, and that's it. That's done. It's in your head. If you're not really consumed by politics, you just assume that little joke that they made on SNL sums up those guys right there. And I don't blame you for that, but don't argue with somebody who's looking at who's reading articles and reading other articles to compare the two, and then watching the speech themselves, and then looking at someone's history to see how involved they really were with the KKK or some shit, And then, you're going to debate me for an hour because of a 2-second joke you heard on SNL. Clearly I got some fucking beef in there, Tom.
Yeah. Well, and going back to, the narratives and all, and, critical race theory and all these like just crazy things that are going on. And again, who you watch is how you determine, whatever you're seeing in the world. There's a woman who was Somalian woman. I believe she's lesbian. I think I could be wrong about that. Her name is Ayan Hirsi Ali. I could have butchered her name possibly too. But she's on Joe Rogan a few weeks back. And the first 45 minutes, it was a little tough to get through. I think I might have mentioned this before. I'm not really sure. It was a little bit slow. She has a very soft-spoken voice. And it was tough, but then, they really got into it, and she's really, really interesting. She was on Ben Shapiro. She was on Megyn Kelly. And the problem is like she was saying, she's like, these are really the only places that will have me on. The left won't have me on because I will debate them and their ideas clash, because she is a Muslim. She was a former Muslim, and she wrote a book about radical Islam that was kind of like coming over to like the UK. And they were seeing a rash of incidences where, crimes being committed, rapes and all, by Muslim men against British women. Now, this is where the culture clashes. So like the left wants to say they want to hide it. They want to cover it up because, they don't want Muslim men to be framed as, they don't want Islamophobe and all that stuff. So they're not really reporting these as hate crimes or whatever. But the problem is when you get, like she was saying, when you get these guys up on the stand, like when they go to court, they blame it on the culture. They blame their crimes on the culture. Well, the women should have been covered up. Well, you shouldn't sell liquor on every corner. So again, the ideologies of the left, they're just, it's like bumper cars. Like I made this, they're just constantly clashing. You have women's rights movements. If you said that if I told a woman to cover up, I'd be a fucking homo. I would be, I would be misogynistic. You know what I mean? But they're blaming their crimes on that. And they're like, well, that's just their culture. Well, there's culture clashes. That's the problem. Like, it's not that we're afraid of Muslim, but you're going to run into these issues. And you're trying to cover it up and pretend like it's not happening, but it is.
But even with that, like one thing that I find is hilarious with like the Muslim situation in a sense is the left is constantly like sticking up for them in exactly the way you're saying. And it makes me laugh because it's like, how do you align yourself with a group of people who absolutely hate, like they absolutely despise women independence?
Again, it doesn't make
It doesn't make
sense.
any sense. Yeah.
you know, so and you know, when it comes, so she talks about the critical race theory and a lot of the issues that she has with wokeism. Um, so she went into depth, you know, with all that going on, and especially what's being taught in schools, which was absolutely wild because I just saw this TikTok video of this white teacher.
Great. I was going to bring it up. Go ahead.
She made this TikTok video, and I just didn't even know what to say anymore. She was basically saying, I wanted to go cover up my student's cut, but all I have are these white band-aids.
Yeah.
And I refuse. It's just another form of white supremacy. It's just adding insult to injury. Dude, I was literally speechless. Well, I was like, where are we at? Like, what is going on? That a child, like, do you really think a child is going to put a band-aid on his and they're going to feel threatened?
No, she said, I'm literally adding injury,
insult to injury.
Yeah. And but you know, dumb thing, sidetrack, but on the same thing. I actually saw that and was appalled, and then sat down and said, well, maybe that is fucked up, right? You got like, cause I think they're called flesh color, right? I'm not,
but well, they have flesh color, but not all band-aids. Not all band-aids even have that.
But this is what I'm getting at. If you made a band-aid, right, and you're only going to make one color, okay?
Right.
And you're like, okay, like this goes back to things we've talked about before, where it's like, in other words, in women's sports, why does she not make money? Well, people ain't buying it. So in other words, if you're making a color band-aid that you want to be whatever, that lightish brownish color that they use anyway, it's probably works for 80% of the population without it being a problem. You know what I mean? And as dumb as this might sound, I mean, every once in a while, I have black friends that'll joke around and we'll put our hands up to each other's. And you know what's funny about like fucking the way we see color? Go ahead sometimes. And even if you're fucking like a really pale skinned dude, trust me when I tell you, dude, it's not all the time is it so different. You know what I mean? When you put your flesh up to another person's flesh of a different race.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's you know, but anyway, dude, I thought you were going to talk about a different video. Did you see the one with the kid who I give so much kudos to because he probably was being a dick, but he wasn't doing it with, you know, I think he really believed in what he was saying. Did you see the dude in the critical race class that like was on a Zoom with his teacher?
And I just saw that.
Dude, it's the best. He's like, what do you see here? And the dude's like, two people just hanging out. He's like, tell me what you really see here, you know? And the dude's like, what are you trying to make me do? Like, you want me to see a black and a white girl or something? But it's just so funny because the dude totally debunks the whole thing. He's like, I thought this thing's about like not seeing color. And he's like, no, but you do see it. Like the teacher was like jamming it in his face. I'm like, this is ridiculous, dude.
Yeah, it was like this long, drawn out thing. Like he was like, I don't know, I see two people. And the teacher's like, well, yes, but like what else? And he's like, I don't know. They're just kind of hanging out. And he's like, yes, but what? And
but he was acting like the kid was being an answer. He's like,
yeah.
What he like, in other words, the kid, of course he sees that, but he's just like, whatever, it's just two people.
Right.
And the teacher's like, but like, you know, well, I guess the reason why it debunked the whole fucking critical race theory to me was like, of course he understands. If you want to, in other words, the dude's like, I see two people hanging out. But I guess the point of critical race theory is to like make you say, I see a black girl and a white girl. And then probably the video ended when they just kind of got to that concept of it. But the sick part is I imagine that teacher wanted him to see something deeper, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like if they would have kept going on, he would have said like something else that he saw there in that picture, which is, you know, there was nothing. It was kind of gross.
So with all of this going on, we had there was like a few tweets from like some, there's a guy, Ibram X Kendi. He's like a leading voice, a black man that is a leading voice in the critical race theory. He's written some books and stuff on it. And I obviously disagree with the majority of his stuff he says. Obviously, I haven't read his books, so there's a lot that I don't know. So I can't make total, complete judgment. But based off of some things that I've heard, some tweets and whatnot that I saw, he actually, to him, it's power plus prejudice equals racism. So because the majority, I guess, of white people, he's saying, have power in this country, that's why, white supremacy is all over the place. But he admits that not all people in power are white. So he does kind of admit that, black people, I guess, or other people, not just black people, can have power. Which is why some of the people with the Asian hate crimes, people have overlooked it because they're like white. They're seen as white adjacent, which there were multiple publications, news articles about how race doesn't affect Asians and just a bunch of nonsense. So there was Asian people that came out and they were like, last week we were white. Like now you're coming on and now you want to try and say like that we're minorities again. So now Angela Stanton, who we mentioned on the show before, she put out something on Instagram, which I thought was interesting. And she said, I don't know who was about to get upset by the statement I'm about to make, but it's the honest truth, so I don't care. FYI, I've experienced more hate and racism from Asians in America than I have ever from white people in America. Now, it's kind of things that we talked about on the show a little bit before. Racism is like, it's just a weird thing. How do you know that it exists? How do you know that somebody else has racist thoughts, unless they come blatantly out and say it? How do you interpret it? Like, just because she experienced that, does that mean that that's all throughout the United States? You know what I'm saying? Because when you scroll through and you go through some of the comments, like obviously there's a lot of black people that agree with her. But there was also Asian people that were saying, look, I've experienced the majority of my racism from black people. So this is what I mean, where the identity politics are just constantly butting heads. And then it's just like, well, we're just blaming everything on white people. And basically that's what AOC was coming out and saying again recently about the border. Everything that's going on the border, besides if it's the climate is the problem with the border right now, as well as white supremacy. It's just, none of this makes any sense anymore. And it's not sustainable. And I really, really hope that people start to like look outside of mainstream. And we talked about this so many times. I feel like it gets a little bit redundant, but I don't know. It's like, you just go over these things and it's just like, none of this makes sense. Like, how do we expect to move on? And if you think that Joe Biden, and not just Joe Biden, if you think that any politician is going to get in office and push some kind of law that's going to stop all this, it's just not going to happen. I mean, we're seeking solutions to spiritual problems from politicians, and it's impossible. It's just not going to happen.
Well, that's the other thing too, is like, they're all fucking, like, I mean, listen, I might have supported Trump or whatever, but never along that line was I like, I feel like the Republicans that were like I guess what you'd call the populist movement now. Yeah. Like we were expecting like we were stabbed in the back by Republicans on the way in, you know what I mean? And so when we seen some of them stab us in the back on the way out, it wasn't like, oh my God, we thought you were, we believed everything you said. Where I'm getting with this is, why do we all, why all of a sudden are these people believing like why would a fucking black person believe that Nancy Pelosi gives a fuck about him? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't understand it. But yo, I'll tell you something. When you said this, when you said the borders now, it's a climate change thing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I'll just tell you the reason why I can't get out of these fucking crazy conspiracies with this shit. This is just one example of what I've seen over and over again. About like 4 or 5 months ago, there was some dude from Australia who was basically saying what happened to his country and what's going to happen to America soon. He was like,
Yeah.
we're months behind you, but this is the reset. This is what they're doing.
Right.
So what he said, I mean, dude, I didn't even like, it wasn't like I was like really following this guy. I was actually like going like, let me see what this idiot's saying now. And the guy said, which I didn't even understand at the time because it doesn't make sense to me now. He said, they're going to force immigration on you. They're going to open up the borders. They're going to cause chaos at the border, but they're going to make it where the UN makes it, instead of being a border crisis, they're going to make it a humanitarian crisis and blame it on global warming. And then what they're going to do is they're going to say that it would be immoral for the United States not to take on, no matter where they're coming from, because it's not a burden of people coming to America for any other reason than global warming. Like it was like they were going to push it on us and say that it was our job, even if it overburdens our economy, because we have to help these people. Right. And I'm thinking, it didn't even mean anything. It was 4 or 5 months ago, you know?
Yeah, right.
And then the crisis border was going on. And I'm like, the border crisis was going on. And I'm thinking, okay, still never thinking about that dude. And then all of a sudden they cut to Nancy Pelosi. And she's like, this is not a whatever. This is global warming. And this is a humanity. And I'm thinking, that's exactly what this fucking dude said. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's been too many things. And like what that dude says, and I've already seen the first lag of it. What he said then is he said what they did to us in Australia is first they incentivized you to house them. Like I just read an article that there's a foster home community, like a group of foster homes that operate under like an umbrella. So somebody buys a bunch of houses, puts foster parents in them, and then they take care of foster kids. Well, they pay more now to take care of immigrants. So they turned around and kicked all the foster kids back into, I guess, an orphanage. I don't think they kick them on the street. But so in other words, these housing places that usually house foster kids have flipped over to doing immigrants because it pays more. Mm-hmm. Again, this Australian dude said, what's going to happen is the big companies will take them in and they'll get paid for it. Then he said they're going to start incentivizing individuals to take them in. Like, in other words, if you wanted to just foster in a family, the government will pay you. He said, and then the next tier of that, where it gets scary, and this is what they said happened in Australia, then they force you to take a migrant family. Like, you're unemployed, you're living on the government, now you have to take in some migrant family. And the guy said in Australia, what's happening is people have been forced to take other people in their homes. And in some cases, those people are like raped somebody in their family. And in some cases, the people just kind of took over the household and there's nothing they were forced to take them in by the government. Now, sounds crazy, right? But at the same time, watch when you see in a couple months when they start telling you that they'll pay you some money to fucking take one of these guys in your house. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds crazy. And I thought it was completely crazy then. And then when they called this thing a humanitarian climate change crisis, I'm like, wait, maybe this Australian maniac's up to something, you know? And everything I just said might sound crazy, but it's not that I'm sitting there like Alex Jones in it. I dismissed the guy until I heard this crazy talk of this is a climate crisis. What? You know?
Yeah. And I mean, it does sound crazy. And, you know, people are like, oh, conspiracy theory as per usual. But it's like, why would you not? why would you not question things? Why would you not question what's going on when you know what I mean? Like, no, like, listen, I'm naturally very inquisitive. Like, I'm always like, wait, I don't understand. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. I want to know people, like, cause I don't always take people for face value. Like, sometimes I think a little bit too deeply. I get that. But, when you see what's going on, and a lot of this stuff just doesn't make sense. I mean, clearly we understand that, as soon as Trump left office, the border got swamped because they were under the impression that, they were just going to come, they were going to basically get a free ride. I mean, this has basically been brought up at White House press conferences, so it's not a conspiracy theory. There are other people asking the same questions. You know what I mean? So it's like, because of that, now the problem that Democrats were complaining about with Trump, now it's even worse because they all think they're just going to come over and everything's going to be fine. They're going to get right in. Now it's even worse. And then on top of that, now they have to come up with a solution for that. So they spent, what was it, $86 million to put a bunch of them up in hotel rooms. And I'm like, so wait a minute. We got $86 million to throw at that, but yet we still have American families that are homeless now because of the fucking restrictions that you put during COVID.
Yeah. Well,
we have even before that, California, New York, all these major cities that have major homeless problems, issues, and we can't take care of that before, we take on more people. Well, I mean, and then I just saw another report that in convention centers in Texas, I think it was Texas, they're teaching these immigrant children while there's other schools that are currently closed down.
And the person's bragging about it.
And I'm like, well, what the fuck is this?
But dude, even think about what you just said. Like, imagine the hypocrisy of kicking out 20 foster children from a house because you're now going to get paid more to take in migrants. Like, that's because that's part of this movement. They're trying to figure out a way to house them. And I don't know if you've put the pieces of the puzzle together yet, but like, they keep saying, well, we're not going to we'll eventually give you. So they're rushing around right now to clean this mess up visually to then act like, oh, now the press can come in. You know what I mean?
Right.
But another thing I want to add, in case you don't know this, when you're like saying that these people are coming here because they assume that they're getting a free ride. I don't know if you missed this, but he signed an executive order that gave him a free ride. like in other words, that's what's making this thing so ludicrous is Biden put that order in where like, you're not allowed to like arrest people and shit like that. He made ICE stop. Now they're fighting it now.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, because I did see something where during one of the press conferences, Jen Psaki was questioned on it. And there have been some statistic, like 75% or higher of the people that have come over have been arrested. So I don't really know. It's very complicated.
Well, this is the part that's not complicated. This is not theory. This is real. When these people get there, basically what's going on is they go there, they get detained for 72 hours, right? But they're being contained for longer. But and this is not conspiracy. This is what they're doing with these people because Biden already said that they're not going to. He changed the law. So basically, before what Trump did was when the people got there, they would take their name, take their whatever, send them back to Mexico and give them a court date, which might be 2 years, 3 years later. It was like a way to not have people that you couldn't keep track of in your country and then they would have a court date and they'd come back. Well, Biden reversed that. So what's going on is they're getting a court date and then they're just releasing them into America, but they're putting them on bus. Like basically the kid will show up with a phone number, like on his fucking chest for real. And when he gets here, as long as he's got some type of contact, they send them to that contact, but there's all kinds of ways that they're exploiting that. What people are saying is that people are coming over here with a contact and that contact is not their parent. You know what I mean? Like it's all different. It's all different shit. But the bottom line is these people are not being sent back until just recently when it became a real big disaster. And now they're trying to clean it up. So Biden reversed and he went back to Trump. He went back to some of the Trump policies, but he's trying not to say that he did. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I did see that during the press conference. Like apparently they opened some of the, not only some of the policies, but some of the facilities that initially they want to shut down.
Well, no, that's been open. Now they're building, whatever. We can go on this forever, but what I'm saying is listen, I've never followed a border crisis before, but apparently this is something absurd. Like when Trump was there, they said that what was going on was they would have 250 people in a place that was supposed to hold like 100. And now they have like 1,200 people during COVID in a place that's supposed to hold 100. And they're getting like 6,000 a day. Whereas under Trump, it was like 200 a day,
Yeah. I mean, and again, so although, if you talk about these things, you're just racist, but it's like, I don't understand what's complicated about having an immigration system that works, that just, look, you have to come here legally. You know what I mean? You have to work your way through it. And that's just the way things have to go for numerous reasons, especially during a pandemic. You know what I mean? Like, but and again, back to all the whole identity politics. I posted this fucking thing, which I thought was, which was a great perspective and a great point on how blaming white people for everything is just like the national narrative. So this guy, he tweeted out, he was like, serious question. If mainstream lefties are right that saying China virus is what caused an upsurge in brutal violence against Asian Americans, what would the effect of incessantly criticizing whiteness, white fragility, white privilege, and white gaze logically be? And I'm like, that's exactly right. The same reason that blacks are attacking Asians are saying they're discriminated, and blacks are saying, is because I kind of lost my train of thought there because I'm getting all over the place. But when you constantly tell people like you're the oppressor, you are not, you put labels on certain groups because again, Asians were white adjacent. So they are doing well for themselves so they can be oppressors. Of course, you're going to have issues. You know what I'm saying? Like people are not going to get along when you're teaching different ideas of who can be an oppressor, who's oppressed. It's just nonsense. It's like,
well, and I think like what you were saying there too is like, here's the thing that I can't wrap my head around. It doesn't make sense. I know 100%, I know that the people at the high levels pushing these policies or push whatever they're pushing, I don't even know what they're pushing because they're not really pushing policies. They're just pushing like narratives. But the thing that I don't understand is these people aren't dumb. You know what I mean? These people, they're not dumb. And people like Nancy Pelosi didn't do this for her 40 some years in politics. And all of a sudden, this is all she cares about. And what scares me, and I've said it in the beginning of all this, like the first, year or two of Trump, one of the things I kept saying in my head was, it's really fucked up because these people are saying this shit. They know it isn't true. And then when they walk away from it, we're all left here to deal with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like Trump's in office and now you tried to say he was a racist Russian agent and now he's in office and now we're left here like to fight about it. And at the time I thought, man, this is so dumb because like I thought it was just for that election cycle. Like they did this shit. And now where we're at, I'm like, wait, maybe what I thought was horrible was just the crumbs, like up to the bigger picture. And I don't know what the end game is because it's, like as if you believe like I do that a lot of this shit is complete farce, where then what do you want? What's the end game? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
like transgenders represent like 0.0 fucking 1% of our nation. Like, does Nancy Pelosi really feel that they should be more represented in everything and whatever else? Like, I doubt it. You know what I mean? I doubt it. I really doubt it. I don't. And
it's all virtual signaling. That's all
but
it is. It's like trending. It's like it's just a trending topic that people ride out, and they just ride that wave to stay in power, to get people to like them. And I don't know, man. I'm really like, the one thing that I can say that, in some of these, like the Angela Stanton post, I went on AOC's page and I looked after her ridiculous rant on the border. There's a lot of people that are commenting that are making sense. A lot of people
making sense which way?
Making sense and like calling her out. Like,
oh, no,
saying,
no.
like,
Well, but this is what I'm starting to get scared of is, dude, the thing that I'm not understanding is they're not operating it like politics usually is. When you said they're virtue signaling or whatever, here's the thing that I don't get. They're actually losing people as we speak right now. I still feel that this thing is actually it's going against them more now, right? But the thing that scares me is every time I think, okay, now, like back in the day, politicians would flip flop all the time just based on polls. They have a poll out right now that like 90% of Americans, 90% Democrat, Independent, Republican, and I think I'm exaggerating. It's like 70-80% though, disagree with the women's sports shit. Yeah. Usually politicians, like every day apparently before they go into their chambers and shit, they have their little publicists and shit, and they read off all these polls to them. And, you look at it, not just with the Democrats, you also got Republicans where, they're being told like 10% of Republicans are with you if you vote to impeach. 90% of your own constituents said if you vote to impeach that they will fucking censor you. And they're going out there and voting to impeach. It just seems to me like the concept of going after the voter is gone. And so that's where I get left with like, so what do you want? You're in power. You have power. You don't need the people behind you to make any decisions. You're trying to get rid of the filibuster. You're able to pass almost anything that doesn't break the Constitution just right through the House and through the Senate. So why do they still want chaos? That's confusing to me.
Well, because, a country divided is a country easily manipulated. And it's just a play for power. It's all the same. It's the same thing. There's a reason why the Democrats now want the push for illegal immigrants and for no voter ID and all these things, because look, you just brought in I don't know how many millions more votes that could potentially swing your way. I mean, it's all just it's just a power play. That's it.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And that's why they push the white supremacy, because they pander to minorities, black and brown people, because between that and like usually, white women, that's their demographic as far as their voter base. So they're just going to say what they need to say to make those people happy, even though it's usually lies. Like almost every single platform and the thing that they come out, statistically, it can be disproven.
Well, I also
the majority of the time anyway. I don't
want
to
no. I think you're 100% right. And to add what I really think, is going on with why they want so much immigration right now, it's what you said, but I'll add a little bit to it. I think that in the last election, they saw not enough. Like, let's just say all the numbers were correct. They saw that they did lose for the first time ever. Republicans gained some of that minority vote.
Yeah.
And I really think, sadly, that they're exploiting black people. But I think actually the Democrats quietly behind closed doors were like, yo, we've used this black vote for so long, and like we almost fucked up and lost them in the last election. So I think that they're that basically, I feel like, to
The
be honest
well,
with you, I feel like black
well,
people, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like they're shooting themselves in the fucking foot because
yeah.
the Democrats are trying to get it to where they don't have to care about them anymore. You know what I mean?
They might be like the well's drying up a little bit, so
Yeah.
we gotta go seek for fresh water. You
Motherfuckers.
know what I mean? Dude, it's wild, man.
Yeah.
And I got to go skydiving or something, man, because I'm going crazy with like
Well, I'm actually over it. To be honest with you, dude, I'm just at this point, and this is what I mean where I think they're fucking up. Like 6 months ago, I was like, man, what's going on? And then what happened is, like, it's, when they say, like, don't fucking put a rat in a corner or something,
yeah,
and it's one of these things where it's like, at one point I felt like there was something I could do, like, man, I want to, like, let people know I'm not like I'm not going to be virtue signaling, you know what I mean? But
right.
it's like I felt at one point like I really wanted to let people know that, like, that Trump supporters weren't like this, or I didn't feel this way, or da 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 da. Then they went to the bowing down shit, and I'm like, well, I kind of still want to, but I'm not this. And now, like, we went all the way from there to this Asian hate, and I'm like, dude, I don't even fucking, like, I went to China because I love Asian people. I'm starting to regret that a little bit, but like, what I'm getting at is, now I'm at a point where, like rather than me feel any type of emotion, I'm emotionless, and all I can do is think, well, whatever the fuck people are going to think of me, it's kind of out of my control. Rather than me try and show anyone that, or change anyone else's narrative, I've been so pushed down by the shit that I'm just going to live my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Which,
yeah.
and so, in other words, it's like, did they overdo it? Like, how many other people feel like that? Who fucking knows? But, that's how I feel, is like, whatever now. Like, dude, like, I laugh. Like, now I'm even laughing because there was a couple things I thought of. Like, they showed, like, some of the NBA guys were playing some type of, like, like some type of, like, celebrity basketball game.
Yeah.
And I wrote underneath, like, where's all the transgenders? You know what I mean? So in other words, what I'm also laughing at is how, like, certain people don't have to partake in this. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
nobody's wondering why there's no transgender men in the NBA. And I can guarantee you that that dude would be ridiculed. You know what I mean? Or girl, or she, whatever. Like, I could only imagine if you started trying to force that kind of wokeism on into, like, LeBron James got no problem fucking commenting on it, but I'd like to see what happens if they forced it on him, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of like the George Carlin clip that you shared a few weeks ago, where basically he was like, "Look, I am done with the American experiment.
Yeah.
I love people as they come, but when people get into groups, they get a little bit dangerous and they get a little bit, crazy. So like I'm done with it. Like I don't want to be a part of your group. I don't want to be a part of anything. Like basically as an individual, when you come up to me, I enjoy your company. I enjoy that person. Great. But everything else, I'm just going to kind of sit back and just watch it play out.
Yeah.
And that's exactly perfectly how I feel, only because like it sucks. Once I started really kind of like sharing a lot of stuff on social media and all, like I said, I lost a lot of a decent amount of followers. And I'm sure that to some extent it kind of like annoys people. Like I've had some conversations with people that are like, dude, what's up with this? And I get it. But I saw so much angst and vitriol and just dumb shit that people posted over the Trump era. I just feel compelled now to call those people out. Like I just feel like, and I don't want to be a dick. I don't want to be a dick, but like the fact that you labeled all these people deplorables, uneducated, all these negative terms that you threw at Trump supporters. Now I kind of feel like I just want to call you out on your hypocrisy. And I'm kind of laughing about it. I'm also
Yeah.
laughing about it because, like, again, when I see this critical race theory and now with the Asian hate against blacks and everything's still white supremacy and it's just constantly clashing, it's like I'm just kind of mocking it. It's like that teacher with the band-aids. Like I can't help but laugh. Like I feel bad that she's like it's crazy to me that she's a teacher. It's crazy to me. Like she needs a fucking lobotomy. Like it's wild to me that she has an impact on young minds because I think it's going in the complete wrong direction.
Well,
But like at the
even
same time, I don't have kids. I don't really have any skin in that game. So like for me as a 40-year-old guy at this point, like I'm kind of almost like I just gotta have to ride it out. Like I'm still gonna say what I gotta say. I'm still gonna mock it when I can because I think it's ridiculous. But what can I do? Like I'm just gonna kind of ride it out and eventually, get a little mountain house or something, hopefully, and just like send, say kumbaya to everybody and whatever, and just peace out. And that's
well, what I think is funny, and you touched on it, is when you said posting stuff on Facebook. What I personally don't really do that shit a lot. I don't think you do either. I'm not saying you do.
oh, I do. I have been
Well,
much
but
much more recently.
I think it's a little. It's still vague enough. Well, it's a perfect example of what I'm saying too, because what I think is funny is the world we live in is your friend can post whatever the fuck he wants all day long, 3 times a day. And it could be against Trump, against people that support Trump. It could be something about the fucking insurrection. And you're seeing it every day. And then when you post one thing, someone says, yo, man, what the fuck's up with that? You know what I mean? Or you post one thing and then someone will tell you, like, dude, like, don't be posting political shit or yada yada. And it just shows me the hypocrisy of like, so you like, why is it that their politics are so just? So this concept of, hey man, we don't talk politics. I've been noticing this in my bar. I've said it to you before. Like, they can run CNN all day and every customer can come in and say, can you believe we have a racist as a president? But the minute I say, what makes him racist? I start to debate that guy, then I'll be getting pulled in the office like, look, we can't talk politics at work. There's no, and then when that dude gets all heated, somebody will tell me, dude, you're not supposed to talk politics. So it's like, I have to walk around all day and get fucking bashed and have people say whatever they want. It's only don't talk politics when I talk politics that they don't like. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
CNN could be on all day long, but if I say, yo, put on Fox News, yo, man, no fucking politics in here. You know what I mean? Like, it's just there's something wrong with that.
Well,
But when you said the George, the clip from George or whatever, the most interesting part about that clip to me is when he says, even in groups of two, and it made me really go back to like my fucking childhood, because that's what my life was like with a lot of the different groups of friends I had, where it was like, I would have a kid who was a friend who would be over my house with me and would be vulnerable and would be telling me, like, he'd be upset about a girl, and they'd always want to talk to me.
right.
Like, out of the group of 5, I would find myself like with that dude having that kind of conversation that he wouldn't have with anybody else. And then we would leave the house and be in a group of 2 or 3, and that dude would be the first to like act a totally different way around these other 2 or 3 people, you know? And it always stuck with me that that's how I, even moving on in my life, it really is that small of a group. Like, you add one more person to the mix and that dude's personality completely changes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it made it hard for me to bang some of my friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. And listen, it's again, it's unfortunate. Like I don't want to obviously when I post things, like I don't want to upset anyone. I don't want to offend anyone. But at the same time, I'm just not if I feel like there's a truth or there's misinformation, like, and I share it, like, and that's the way I feel. I know I'm a good person. I know who I am. I'm confident enough to say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. If you take it a certain way, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry that kind of, you took it that way. But,
Well,
I obviously, like, I don't want to offend people, but I'm not going to stop being who I am and what I believe. Especially because, look, if somebody sees something maybe that I post and maybe they're like, well, that does kind of, I don't know, that does kind of make sense. Maybe let me look into this. And it maybe helps them, like, not necessarily to kind of sway them over to become a Republican or anything, but maybe it just like starts to make them question the national narrative and kind of like things that are going on in the world. So, that's just kind of where I'm at with all of it.
well, I feel sometimes when I don't do it, it's exactly what you're saying, where it's just like, if I feel like this is how we got here by not doing it. We got here by being like, whatever. I'm not going to like shut
Yeah.
this down. Whatever. They want to say this, whatever. I mean, I wasn't fighting in the street with people about Trump not being racist on fucking day one. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so there are little things that sometimes, sometimes I feel that we should be sharing, because even the whole thing with like flighting off of Twitter and stuff, like, and, Trump's going to put out a fucking social media site and whatever else. And it's like what a lot of the influencers in the Republican Party say is like, don't leave Twitter, stay on Twitter, get on the other sites, but don't leave the space either.
Right. Yeah.
And one thing I'm very excited about, because I've been following it, and I'm not saying fucking Donald Trump's going to be president or anything, but I personally feel whether there's nothing wrong with it at all, and whether nothing nefarious went on, I still follow a lot of the election stuff, because I feel it's very important that we get to the bottom of that to move forward. And they finally are doing a real audit in Maricopa County. They just announced it today, that the guy I followed, Jovan Pulitzer, the guy I told you created the Easy Pass and all that stuff. So they were fighting with him for months about not letting him do it, because he was bipartisan. He's like, I'm a fucking independent, and I'm the only one that understands how to do this. So it's the first legitimate audit that within a month, somebody's going to come out and tell you whether there was any nefarious activity in Maricopa County. And if there is, you'll probably see that go on. And if there isn't, if this guy comes out and says that there isn't, it's going to be a voice that people are going to listen to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if he comes out and says, we did it and it was a real audit and there was nothing nefarious, then, whatever. But it's not like a side thing. It's the Arizona County, Maricopa County guys signed off on it. So Jovan Pulitzer on fucking Twitter, if you want to follow it at all. But I personally think that a lot of that shit needs to get dealt with, dude. Somebody needs to tell these people that nothing happened. You know what I mean? Not in the way that they told us originally. So and it's going to be detrimental, especially to Republicans moving forward, if they don't get to the bottom of that.
Yeah.
But the reason why I bring that up is when they post something like that, I think, I don't want to share this because I'll look crazy. But it's like, you got to fucking share it sometimes, some of the shit, if it's legitimate shit,
Right. And it's like you said, like people on Twitter that were like, yeah, it's great that you create Parler and other, conservative platforms. So you don't want a mass exodus of people that just flock to those things and they're not engaging with other people. You know what I'm saying? Because I do think it is important for people to still put their message out there, or, to put their opinions, whatever it is. Because, again, like that woman, Ayan Hirsi Ali, like that I was mentioning earlier, and she was talking about, the issues that they're having in England and all with the Muslims and all with the culture clashes. She was like, the problem is that they're pretending that it isn't happening, and the far left is pretending that it isn't happening. So by that, people are still seeing and experiencing it, and they are actually emboldening the far right, and the popularity of the far right is growing. So that's my concern with people always blaming white people and saying anti-America and all this like just nonsense. You're actually creating people to flock over to the far extremist right. And it's kind of like, to circle back, like Jen Psaki, to circle back to things here, it's kind of like the Michael Rapaport in Higher Learning and how he became a white supremacist. He was a little bit awkward. Like, he goes to this college and he's a little bit bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. He's kind of like socially awkward. He doesn't really know where he fits in. And people mock him. People make fun of him.
Bookended it on Remy.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, these white guys come along and they start encouraging him. Like, so how does it make you feel that these gay people are taking over your country, and black people and Mexicans? And he finally finds a place where he fits in.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he becomes this extremist. And that's something that I don't think people really think about it enough. When we have this culture again, that just everybody's calling everybody Nazis. Like, there was just some fucking congresswoman, or she was some politician, and she was just on Bill Maher. And they mentioned Gina Carano, and she was like, she's a Nazi. And Bill Maher was like, wait a minute. Like, is she really a Nazi? And she's like, well, she hangs with them. And he's like, oh, listen, there was one, you just keep pushing the goalpost. He's like, that's kind of the problem that we have. I mean, there was one time when we knew what white supremacy was. Like, you see some guys in KKK outfits and walking down the street, like, you knew what it was. But you guys keep pushing the pole down the street and keep it further and further. Now you're just saying it's everywhere, and people are like, what? Like, it's just confusing and it's dangerous. And I'm so glad that apparently she's not a politician anymore. I don't know. But fuck that lady. Fuck her fucking.
That's horrible. When I seen that was disgusting.
Exactly.
Like, I think Gina Carano's suing her for that.
I hope to God that she sues her.
Yeah.
Like the Covington kids, and gets her fucking bag.
Dude, so did you see it?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing when, like, I know, I'm not going to name drop, but I knew a guy that we grew up with that, like, his profile picture, he had a mask that said, I punched Nazis. And it's like, dude, first of all, you weren't the fucking toughest dude in our fucking neighborhood, for one. Okay. 2, who the fuck are you to make that decision? What you deem is a Nazi?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, listen, growing up in our neighborhood, like, it was, I don't know if you remember, but like, there were people that were like, oh, that dude's a skinhead. Now, I don't really know. Like, I never fucking saw legit skinheads. Like, we saw some dudes in like fucking combat boots and like shaved head, and you were like, oh yeah, that dude's a skinhead. But really, I don't know. Maybe the dude was just a fucking into Metallica. I have no idea. But in today's day and age, the dude, the goofball that we know from Southwest with I punch Nazis mask gets to decide that dude's a Nazi and fucking punch him, and violence is okay in his warped brain, his morally warped brain. It's nonsense. It's not sustainable.
Dude, just because you said this and you didn't mention this person, I feel like I may blow your mind in a second. Do you know who Frankie Miek is?
No.
Okay, you're going to know him. He grew up with us, okay? And I remember one day he came down to the basket. It's everything you just described. He was one of them dudes where he's from your way. He's from up your end of the woods.
Okay.
And I remember he used to be like a nerdy kid, right? And then he disappeared. And then one day he came on the basketball courts. And it's funny because I always correlated seeing this. He came down to the basketball courts. He had fucking swastika tattoos on him. He had a bald head. And he was like demanding to play basketball with all the black dudes and being crazy, right?
Right.
And I remember being like, holy shit. Frankie Miink is from Southwest Philadelphia. If you look him up in Wikipedia, he wrote a book where he went to prison, he went to jail because he got fucking radicalized and became a Nazi. He kidnapped somebody, went to prison for it. It was like a hate crime. In prison, he actually turned his life completely around, became really good friends with a black guy, got out of prison and started a hockey league where his whole goal was to integrate white kids and black kids and get to know each other. So he wrote a book about it. The dude from Southwest Philly, and he ended up suing the people that made American History X because American History X is based off a kid from Southwest Philadelphia. You never heard that?
No, I never heard that.
I'll send, I'm friends with him on Facebook, but I wouldn't say, he probably just kind of remembers me. But a lot of people that would probably hear this know exactly who I'm talking about. But he literally, when you look at his Facebook page, he's now like a keynote speaker against racism and stuff. Now, what I will say about him is he's pretty loud right now about some things that I don't agree with him on, but he lived it, you know? Yeah, but when you were mentioning all that stuff, I was thinking in my head, like, he's about to talk about him. But it was exactly that kid that I thought, who's this clown, whatever. Dude, turns out he's the basis for American History X.
I mean, dude, look, that's great. And I mean, seriously, like, I really do think that's great. And what I mean by, and even going back to the fact that, we're just canceling people and we're just deciding who's a Nazi and we can fucking punch them. So we're accepting violence, certain violence, which only, again, is going to spread more violence in both directions. And I look at a kid like that with his profile picture, I punch Nazis, and I'm like, dude, Daryl Davis, like we talked about on this podcast, has done more for this country and race relations and kind of infiltrating the KKK and turning people around their ideas than you ever will in your entire life. But you're just posting your I punch Nazi mask for like you're virtue signaling. That's all you're doing. You're doing absolutely nothing to change nothing at all.
And you couldn't have a debate with that guy.
I wouldn't want to. I have a better time debating with a wall. Like, there's just there's no point to it. Cause like, he'll just be like, dude, whatever. You're just a racist, bro. Like,
but just think about our lives, Tom. That's what we got to, that's how I feel every day. Like, when I see somebody, nobody ever makes, I mean, look, for anybody listening, they might think, well, I don't make good points or something. Listen, I'm going to tell you something now. If you don't think I make good points, that's fine. But trust me, I've never had anyone even remotely close say anything other than me than surface level emotion shit when it comes to any of this political stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And you just have to stop. Like, you just go like, there's no reason for me to go any further. And I think that's the part that hurts the most is like, I'm not even looking to like shut you down. I'm looking to like engage, maybe learn something, maybe find out I'm wrong. And it just keeps, like you said, dude, it keeps reinforcing it.
Oh yeah.
When you know that you've got a point to make and someone just shuts you down with something that, how many times, you go to talk about like Obamacare with somebody and the first thing out of their mouth when they've got nothing to say is like, they mention their cousin that died of cancer. And you're like, okay, I can't say anymore. Or something about racism, about something else. And you're just like, they put you in this place where you can't say anymore, but you've never been, nothing they said proved anything wrong or right, but you're be a real asshole to say something, to push back on this,
Yeah. Well, I'll just say, if anybody thinks that Danny doesn't have any good ideas, then you don't have a good brain.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah.
And to top that off, it's kind of like the Nietzsche quote where he says, if you stare long enough into the abyss will stare back at you.
It's fucking staring at me.
And it's yeah. And I'll tell you what, it's so true. And people need to really just look in the mirror, man, and just look at yourself, do some self-evaluation. When you want to just criticize certain people, you want to criticize America and just fucking say white supremacy, and you just want to just take all these talking points for face value and not recognize like there are other issues here. Like race in this country is very, very complicated. It just is. People are complicated. You know what I mean? Like human beings, we're complicated. So it's not an easy fix. And it's, by you saying let's punch Nazis and going out, like I just saw this video, man, and it broke my heart the other day. I saw this video, this dude. I don't know where it was. I don't know if it was some protest. I'm not really sure exactly what it was, but it was this older guy. He's got an American flag in the back of his truck, and it looked like a bunch of dudes, like a bunch of Antifa people. They're pepper spraying, banging his car, broke window, broke the back tailpipe, and he's getting out and he's like trying to like get back. And eventually, like they like spray shit at him, and eventually he pulls out a gun and cocks it, and they all freak the fuck out, and they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, dude's got a gun!" And then the cops come and they see him. And of course, they're like, drop the gun, put the gun down. Guy, I don't know what happened. I mean, obviously, I'm sure he probably got arrested. But the problem is that these idiot, mindless zombies that are stuck in these ideological, like, just, I don't even know what's going on in their heads. They're provoking this guy. They broke the car windows on his car. They're spraying pepper spray at him. That whole confrontation didn't need to take place. Like he wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, well, like where were the cops when that was going on?
Well, exactly. But
That's what I don't understand.
But that's what I mean. In this country, it's weird. We have this double standard, and the real only way that we can get back to a level of normalcy is treat everybody the same. I mean, it's really that simple. We just cannot have certain things. It's okay to go protest this. It's not okay to protest that. You can punch Nazis if that's okay, but you can't punch these people. Like, it's we're called layman terms for a reason. We try to break things down simply. And I know I just said it's very complex, but think of it. If you have multiple children in your house and you treat them all differently, none of them are the same. One gets away with murder. They can do whatever they want. One gets constantly criticized for doing other. There's going to be a lot of tension in your house. Like those kids are not going to get along, and they're going to grow up. They're going to be resentful towards one another. I mean, it's kind of like I really like that show. This Is Us. Do you ever watch that?
I don't watch it, but I know the show.
They adopted the black son, and the other kids felt like he's overprotective for the mother, and he's always the smartest, and they bring in race like because they always felt like the mother maybe paid too much attention to him because he was black, and maybe it was because she was like, well, I didn't want him to feel left out. But that's a perfect example of when you're not treating everybody the same. Look, life is going to throw you curveballs, and it's very possible that we're all going to have different experiences. But if our government and the general consensus isn't saying, look, we have to treat everybody the same, we can't make special privileges, and we can't do this, because it's just going to cause friction between everybody. Because the person that you're saying is the oppressor, there's going to be some poor motherfucker that has a, drug addict father or whatever that gets beat up all the time at home, doesn't have any power, doesn't have any say. And you're going to say that some, Jay-Z's kid is oppressed? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? We're gonna try and make that comparison because they're different ethnicity. Like it just doesn't work. It's
Well,
not going to work.
well, you know what
This
else
isn't.
too? There is an oppressor, but he's he's constantly changing, evolving, and he's an individual, not a group. You know what I mean? Like everyone may have a case of some situation that is an oppressor, but you can't teach in school that it's going to be this person or it's going to
Right.
be that thing.
Right.
There's going to be an oppressor that evolves, and if we see an oppressor not from who we're being told is the oppressor, and if we identify an oppressor or oppression within our community, and we are a community and we are a group together, not sectionalized by tribes or by race or by anything other than we are this group of people, then we can collectively identify an oppressor and attack an oppressor by whatever that means.
And you know why? And you know why the oppressor doesn't want that?
Yeah, of course.
Because they'll be removed from fucking. Because people will legitimately
Yeah.
start to question what the fuck is the government doing?
Yeah.
What are these policies? Why are you voting for this bullshit? Like it's a shame, man. It's
I
you know.
do feel like we're on the cusp of something though, dude. Like I really feel honestly like this is where my hopes are is like if some people I feel like you know and this might sound like I'm saying Trump supporters but I do feel like people don't understand what a Trump supporter was, and the Trump supporter is you know I put on Twitter the other day I said there's four kinds of groups in the country right now. There's the Democrats, there's the Democrats and the Republicans, and there's the people that realize that they can't trust their politicians, and then there's a group of people that blindly trust their politicians. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
basically I feel like one thing that I can take away for certain walking out of what I've experienced in my little 4 or 5 years in politics here is that, you know what? I'm 100% positive that you can't believe everything you fucking hear in the news, and you can't trust any politician, and you got to stay on their ass and always keep your eye on them if you care to. And I feel that other people are going to get there. And if there is more of like right now, we're at like half of the country is where I just said. And if you get 20 more percent people waking up to that, I mean, you're getting close to a large group of people that don't trust what their government's telling them anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if we've ever really been in a situation like that. And but the other thing is that it can't end. It can't end. Like they can't. You can't just leave us all sitting here being white supremacists in everybody's eyes. There's this going to have an ugly ending, and I don't believe it's going to have an ugly ending. So I see a positive coming at some point. I really do believe that whatever is going on is going to backfire in a huge way. That's personally what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I
If the left comes to see their party for what we have, and when I say we, I don't consider myself a Republican. So if there's a group of people that end up realizing that they can't trust their politicians the way we have, that right there is a cohesion. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens, I
yeah,
guess. I mean, we got
yeah.
time.
Well, when you listen to like I really suggest listening to this woman Ayan Hirsi Ali. She really is fantastic. And that is one thing that she warns against. Like she's like, I don't think that people realize how dangerous this could get. This woke, far left woke ideology. She was like, because there's literally people that are entrenched in politics, right in American politics right now, that want to see America burn. And the rest of the world kind of follow suits with what we do. You know what I mean? So, and this is coming from, a Somalian immigrant. Like she basically said, she's like, the strangest thing to me, and I just saw somebody recently kind of saying, like, making like a meme of like how people view America and what America actually is. Like how people view America is Superman, and then what it actually is like the villain that's comparable to him in the Amazon Prime show The Boys. And she basically was saying, she was like, you have politicians that want to destroy America. And she was like, for the people that are living here that really, really think that America is this big, bad, oppressive country, she was like, go to parts of Africa. Go to parts of, in the Middle Eastern countries. Like you have no idea what real oppression is. And that's so true. People only know some certain things that go on in this country. Most of it's fucking made up in their own head. But most of us, like we said before, we're spoiled. We're spoiled fucking brats that are just complaining about everything. We really don't realize how good we have it. I mean, obviously, I'm not taking away from, we do have some issues with people, obviously, that things are really bad in certain inner cities and all that. But for the most part, most Americans have it really, really good. Even the bad ones that are kind of in poverty. Like this woman was like, you don't know. You like, and she's lived in Somalia. She's been all over. And she's like, I know what oppression is. So I have a different perspective from, a lot of times people, look, you just went to Puerto Rico. You don't know what you experienced for a couple days. You're like, oh, it's really cool. You don't know what it's like to go search for a job there. You don't know what
Yeah.
it's like to wake up every day there and experience the living and the lifestyle there. And the same thing goes for Canada. Like we don't know what it's like. And the certain things, like you might go vacation there for a week or two. Like, oh, this is great. I love this place. This place is better than America. Well, you don't really know because you're not fully entrenched in that system.
Yeah. Well,
And
even
and again, not to cut you off, but just to finish the point with this woman, she really, really hit home about fighting back against this woke ideology because she was like, it really, really, what they're trying to teach is just extremely dangerous. And she's like, it's going to cause more harm than good. And ultimately, she's like, because a lot of people that are on the far left, that are entrenched, that are, sitting up there and telling you Black Lives Matter, and they're using these code words to come off as these like saviors. And she was like, but really they want to see it burn. And then communism. And I
yeah.
know that's like one of those things that people are like, oh man, that would never happen here. Like that's right wing, talk. But this is coming from a woman that isn't right wing. This is coming from a woman that has gone through a lot of crazy. When you listen to her story, she's going through some shit. You know what I mean?
And I said this on here before. I think first off, this is the thing. Like you're talking my language. I'm not going to get into it, and I always bite my tongue on it. But I mean, that like I feel like even just gathering what we've already accepted. If I would have started saying shit to you about where we are now a year ago, it's like I was even thinking today, like I've said to you on here stuff that sounded crazy where I'm like, dude, they're going to start requiring fucking vaccines for us to go to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when I said that at the time, I'm not saying that I predicted anything. I'm just saying I thought it was pretty much right out there in the open. And a lot of people that I mentioned that to looked at me like I'm crazy. What I'm just trying to say is there's a lot of things that I really believe. See, I think the thing is communism isn't communism. It isn't communism like we once knew communism. So you would think, why the fuck would Nancy Pelosi want communism? You know what I mean? I think that we're dealing with a group of people who have come to the conclusion that they need to start doing things their way, and we don't fucking they know better than us, and the world needs to be globally functioning with Amazon and big business and Facebook, and they see this better future for the, like, I feel like it isn't communism trying to take over. I feel like it's a whole new idea that resembles communism, that people believe is better for the world. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think that they're trying to implement this shit. Like, they see it as, hey, I mean, we never had Facebook. We never had instantaneous communication globally, where we, like, in other words, we no longer need to be a community in, Maricopa County and Drexel Hill and whatever. We could now see the world as one large, instantaneously communicating community. And businesses are no longer American businesses. Our businesses are global businesses. So I think that these people just see, they're reimagining the world in a way that they think is a utopia. And we're too stuck on trying to be Americans, and they got to get that out of our heads. But when you were saying about we're spoiled brats and stuff, and you know what I think is different now is I think we all were spoiled brats. We're all spoiled brats in the sense of the things we bitch about. Like, we'll bitch like, oh, I gotta go to work or whatever. I only had 2 days off this week or whatever. And we have these little things we bitch about. But I think the thing that's different now is, at the end of the day, when there was big issues, we were a community. Like, you were bitching about all these things, and then there was some tragedy, and we all kind of, bind it together. And now, when a tragedy happens, they're trying to fucking pin it on somebody, and they probably always have done it, but I feel now they've attacked the things that actually bind us, in a way where we're spoiled brats, and then we never have that moment where we understand that we have it a lot better. It's like we're, like, I want to feel bad for the people in Colorado, but now it's just like another fucking day, another story they're trying to spin on white supremacists. So, like, instead of us being like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened, can you imagine? Oh my God, I hope that never happens. 20 minutes afterwards, we're fighting about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's a shame, and I don't know what has to happen, but I'll tell you what, I'm 100% on board that there are people that want something really nefarious to happen to us, and not in an evil way. It's in the way that I think has caused civilizations and shit to fall over and over again. You're dealing with people that are in power that actually think that they know what's best for you.
Yeah. And like that woman pointed out, she was like, a lot of the people that buy into the woke ideas, she's like, I don't even necessarily know that a lot of them are evil. Like, they just kind of, they think they're doing good. They think they're trying to heal the world. You know what I mean? And she's like, but there are puppet masters behind them that are pulling the strings. And she was like, listen, when because she's written some books, and like I said, how she talked about the cultures clashing in Europe, and with the influx of Islam. And that's kind of what their latest book was about. She was like, militarily, it's not because, people were like, oh, you're being crazy. That's not, these things can't happen. And she's like, militarily, it's not like I think that, the United States is going to be overtaken militarily. She's like, it's going to be infiltrated, and it's going to implode from within.
Yeah, well, I think that's. I mean, dude, when I think of my time in the stock market, and then even me going to China, trust me when I tell you this makes sense. What I'm realizing now is, dude, for the past 20 fucking years, 30 years, whatever. Like, I don't know if you know this, but you couldn't go to China 20 years ago. You weren't allowed.
Right.
Right. And all of a sudden, now when you think about it, what China started doing was in every facet of American life, they played on our greed. So what it was like recently, the reason why I brought up the stock market was, I don't know how long you've been in it, but about 5 years ago or so, it was China. You got to invest in China. Alibaba is the biggest fucking whatever. And meanwhile, we both know, and so does America. Now, I don't know if you've seen this come up, but it's well known now that they inflated. That's why Trump tried to ban everything from Wall Street. Biden put it back on, because what they found out was almost every Chinese company was inflating its numbers, and we actually were, all these companies were like shell companies that actually support the Communist Party, like military.
Yeah.
Then you have Disney, right? When I went to China, Disney just opened up in China. So what I think what China did was they embraced all our business, right? So you have people like LeBron James, who all of a sudden they're selling basketball jerseys to billions of people, and they don't want to say nothing bad about China. And then you got Disney, and Disney doesn't want to say anything bad about China, because now it's a whole new market of billions of people, and China slowly but surely let everyone in, and then got them so embedded that it was like in other words, you just look at LeBron James. Oh yeah, we'll let basketball over here. They go over, basketball takes off. Okay, then when I went over there, like I told you, they had a fucking Clyde Drexler was playing in some celebrity basketball game right outside in the street. And so they let people go over there and kind of like made it like, oh, we want to like expand these friendships. And then next thing you know, your 1/3 of your income is just China alone. And then it's like, hey, don't say nothing bad about Hong Kong right now. And all of a sudden, it's like they're shutting down certain groups of people now, media, like whatever. It's a little, I don't know if I made my point, but the bottom line is, over the past 20 years, China has let us in under this fake friendship and basically grabbed every one of our industries by the balls by this relationship we created. And it goes back to the I think it was Stalin or one of the big communist leaders in Russia, that he said the right will sell us all the tools we need to destroy them with. So in other words, basically, it's like playing on our greed will play right into the hands of communism. That's part of the playbook. Right. And when you look at where we are now, one of the reasons why that are all of our media doesn't say anything, and Disney does everything that they're supposed to do, and the sports players are going right along with everything, is because if they say anything bad about China, China will just cut them from doing any business. And nobody wants that, because we're greedy motherfuckers, you know?
Yeah.
And I do think we went too far. I think our fucking president's in that shit.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother story, but
you
know, that was I think I think we should wrap it up on that note.
Wrap it up. But anyway, it was really good to see you again, Thomas. And
yeah, this was
one day I'll tell the world about my hiatus.
yeah. That's that'll be a fun episode.
Yeah. One day soon we'll know. But yeah, man, I don't know. But I will say, you know, I do think maybe I just want to think it, but I do think that there's a positive outcome. I just hope that we get there in a good way.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So stay woke. Stay woke there, layman's terms. I hope some of you guys made it this far. And Tom, you got anything you want to say before we go?
No, until next time, folks.
Until next time, as the world turns left. Yes. All right, guys, please like and subscribe. I can't say it enough. It means the most to us. So seriously, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. If you're listening on iTunes, make sure you write a review, give us 5 stars, and subscribe as well. All right, guys.
Show some love.
Stay woke, show some love, eat some butt, read the books, whole gamut. All right, guys.
All right.